Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
Thank you. My name is Cecil and I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Cecil.
Thank you for your talk, Jessica. I really got a lot out of it. And happy birthday to Jean. And I want to welcome the newcomers that raised their hands. I'm 53 years old and I'm 27 years sober. Last July 16th. I didn't want to come here tonight because I was feeling sorry for myself because I had a crisis in my life yesterday and it's really affected me, and I just would rather just stay home and feel sorry for myself, you know. But the first thing that I learned the first day in AA was that it doesn't matter how I feel. What matters is suiting up and showing up and taking the right actions. And I was told that I can't feel my way into good actions, I have to act my way into good feelings. And it's worked for me for 27 years. And I'm really glad I'm here tonight. What happened was my 14-year-old son, I'm divorced couple of years now and separated from my ex-wife a little bit longer than that. And my 17-year-old daughter moved to her and went to Ohio, and my son stayed with me, and he told me yesterday that now he wants to go back and live with his mom too. So I was hurt and angry and all those things, and that's why I was feeling sorry for myself today. And but the bottom line is I told my son that I love him, and no matter what his decisions are or what happens in this situation, that I'm always going to love him, and I'm always going to care for him, and you know, he's part of me, and so that's why I was feeling sorry for myself, you know. But it's okay. I'm already feeling better just by being here and being with you guys, and you know, this is my family, AA, and if you're new, I hope that you stay here and make it your family, because I've been through a lot of stuff in the last 27 years, ups and downs, and AA is the constant in my life, and because I have a relationship with God now that I didn't have when I first got here, you know, I'm able to function in the world and be a good citizen and be a good father to my kids and be a good grandfather to my grandkids. I have 3 children. My oldest daughter's 32 and she has 2 kids, a little girl Hannah who my girlfriend Twee and I are going to spend the night with tomorrow night, and she's 7, and my grandson Timmy is 4, and my oldest daughter, I wasn't really in her life a lot, but I don't think she ever really saw me drink, but I was drinking when she was growing up. But my younger kids and my grandkids have never seen me drink, and that's such a blessing, you know. And but anyway, I was born in Kentucky, son of a coal miner, and I had lots of aunts and uncles around. I think my dad had 12 brothers and sisters, and my mom had 8 brothers and sisters. So there was a lot of little cousins running around. We had a lot of fun together, growing up in the country, and I felt safe with my, you know, because of hanging out with my cousins all the time. But when I wasn't with them, like when I first started going to school, that's when I started feeling apart, you know, I felt different than other people, And we had a little schoolhouse that we grew up in, and I was born in Kentucky, and when I was 3, we moved to West Virginia. And when I went into grade school, I remember the first day of school, I walked to school, and it was already snowing, you know. And it was just a beautiful, idyllic setting, and the snow was just lightly falling. And I just remember being, I don't know, I really felt good because of the snow and just being out in the woods. It was like a wooded area, and, you know, in the mountains, really, in West Virginia. And I remember my mother gave me a dime for lunch, yeah, a dime. And I lost that dime. I was walking to school, and I lost the dime, and I started crying, and I came back, you know, because I lost the dime. And my mother took me to school because I was crying, and I didn't want to go anymore because I lost my lunch money. And she took me into school, and all the kids, you know, they saw me coming in there, and they all started, you know, with my mom, and they all started laughing at me. And that was kind of you know, an indication of withdrawing, really, for the rest of my life into myself. And I felt, you know, stupid, and I was really skinny, you know, and I had freckles, and my teeth were really crooked and funny looking, and you know, I just felt really odd, you know, and I looked odd, you know, and to go with that. But I remember the first time I really had fun. I didn't like school, you know, because I just felt like I was being tortured, you know, being made fun of all the time and so forth. But I remember the first time that I had any kind of fun was I joined the, you know, the choir, the choral, whatever, and I was able to sing a song, and I just obsessed on learning this song. It was, you know, Rubber Tree Plant or some song, I can't remember. And I would get in front of the mirror every day, and I'd start singing this song, and I just drove my mom and dad crazy, you know. My brother, you know, my brother was younger than me, and drove him crazy. And we lived in a little coal mining camp, and we lived in a little house that didn't have running water and stuff. It had an outhouse, and I slept with my brother in the same bed, and we didn't have heat in the house. And it would get so cold at night sometimes, there was like frost on the blankets, and we would just cuddle up, and, you know, we were okay, you know. And then a little after that, we had a couple of younger sisters, and we didn't know, I mean, we didn't know that we were poor, you know, because my dad always provided for us. We had a garden in the summertime, and sometimes when the mines would get really, you know, work would be really bad, we would get commodities from the government. So we always had food, and I didn't know what kind of life we were living. When I wasn't in school, I was really happy because I was with my cousins running around in the woods. And so it was kind of like these two different lives, you know. And when I was 13, the coal mines closed, and we started moving around a little bit between my grandma and grandpa, my different ones on either side, from, you know, in Kentucky. So I was in the 8th grade in West Virginia, then I was in the 8th grade twice in Kentucky, and then from there we moved to Chicago. And talk about culture shock, you know. And I moved into Chicago with my you know, crooked teeth and my, you know, I weighed 140 pounds wringing wet with my overalls and my crew cut and, you know, freckles, and I moved into the barrio in Chicago, and I was scared, you know. And I remember the first time we walked into the apartment on 18th Street in Chicago, I remember Hit the Road Jack was playing. I remember everything by songs, you know. When we were driving into Chicago, I can remember The Lion Sleeps Tonight playing on the radio. Then we pulled up to the apartment, Hit the Road Jack was playing, and there was this basement apartment, and we walked down into there, and we opened up the door, and like 1,000 roaches ran for cover. My mom started crying, and, you know, and my dad says, well, they don't come out when it's, when the lights are on, So that was his answer to that. And I somehow got to be able to be acclimated to the people in Chicago. And my neighborhood was pretty much people from the South like me, and Mexicans and Puerto Ricans, and a lot of Polish people in Chicago in our neighborhood. And I just started really hanging out on the streets, and I really hit it off with everybody, and I just loved it there. And I loved meeting all my friends' mothers, and I don't know why, but Chicago just kind of woke me up, and I felt, even in school, it didn't bother me so much because I started making a lot of friends there. And, I seemed to be okay, even though I still didn't really like school. And then when I went to high school, it was a different story because it was in a really, really bad neighborhood, and there was a lot of like gangs and shooting and all that kind of stuff going on in the hallways and the school. I went to school one time, and I remember a desk flying out the second floor window, and walk home, and you'd always like get jumped, or somebody was always trying to get your money from you, or whatever. And it started getting increasingly worse, and then I finally just said, I told my mom, I said, I'm not going back there, and I was in the 10th grade, and I said, I'm afraid I'm going to get killed, and she was afraid I was going to get killed. So I pretty much holed up in my apartment there where my mom and dad and we all still lived, in a little $50 a month apartment in Chicago, and in the tenements, and the L train was right next to our apartments, and they went by all night long, and all day long, and the L train was probably like from my window from like here to that piano, and there was a lot of street, gangs, and it was just I was just really withdrawn, and I just stayed in my room. And I remember the truant officer came and said, "Is Cecil brought in here?" And she said, "Yeah." My mom said, "Yeah." And he says, "Well, he's got to come to school by law." And she says, "He's not coming to school unless you promise me that he's not going to get killed." And my mom basically got in a fight with the truant officer and wouldn't let me leave the house. And I stayed out of school. And they never came back after that. There were so many kids doing that, I guess they just couldn't keep up with everybody. So I went into my room and I started playing a guitar. This guy in the other apartment taught me how to play a few chords. And like when I first started singing in that little grade school thing, I obsessed on this guitar, and I'm obsessive about everything I do, and I started playing this guitar 10, 12 hours a day, and then I found out that I could actually sing and play at the same time, So I'd start singing and playing 12 hours a day. And my dad was when the coal mines closed, he moved there and became a welder. And all my uncles were welders at the same place. They made sinks, and stuff like that at this place in Chicago. And my mom worked at a place that made phones. And I started playing music for a living. The Beatles came on the Ed Sullivan Show, and that was it for me. My 12 hours a day became 16 hours a day, and I grew my hair long, and I was met with a bunch of guys that like to do the same thing that I like to do, and I was 16 years old, and I went out and started. I got little odd jobs, and I started playing music, and before you know it, I'm just playing music only, and I'm making more money than my dad is making as a welder, and my mom's making at her job. And I'm like helping them pay the rent, and I'm really feeling good about myself, and my hair's down to like here, kind of like this, and my garb was a little strange in the 60s, and I'm 6'3", and I wore platform shoes like this high, and they had stars and moons on them, and I wore a full-length rabbit coat all the time, and I wore those little Benjamin Franklin sunglasses, and I just thought I was something, and everybody else did too. And I got a job playing we got a job in this band that I was in, and I really love these guys. I mean, we played, from 9 at night until 4 in the morning in the club 7 days a week. And then we would go eat breakfast and go home and fall asleep at 8 in the morning and wake up at 2 or 3 in the afternoon, and then we'd practice until like 5 or 6, and then we'd get ready and go play a gig again. And we just lived together, and we drank, and I didn't start drinking until I was 19. And but as soon as I started drinking, I immediately, it started to progress like really fast, and I was drinking, anywhere from, when I first started, I would drink a 6-pack of beer or something, and a year and a half I was drinking, probably almost a fifth a day, and playing these gigs, and we got a recording contract. We were playing in really big clubs in Chicago. We were traveling all around the Midwest. We got a recording contract, and we recorded an album, and we had this one guy that wanted to put a lot of money into our band and do the advertising and do the whole thing, and then one of the guys in the band just didn't want to go along with the program, and it all just fell through just like that. And I was devastated, and so were the other 3 guys in the band, and the band broke up. And at that time I was I got married when I was 19 years old, and being married and being in a band doesn't really mix real well, especially when you don't know how to be a husband anyway, or a father. She got pregnant with my now daughter, who's 32, and we stayed together about 2 years, and then she couldn't take it anymore, and she didn't want to move. We lived like 2 doors away from her mom, and she didn't want to move away from her mom, and that was a good excuse for me to just hightail it, and that's what I did, and I just played all these gigs and just stayed up all night and doing all this carousing, and and I wasn't really taking care of my little daughter, and I'm not proud of that. My ex-wife, my first wife, she didn't want to have anything to do with me anyway. She didn't want any of my money. And I didn't force the issue, because I was drinking everything up. I was either drinking the money up or I was putting it back into equipment for the band. And it was all, it was just all about me, and me. And when this guy flipped out and the band broke up, I met this other girl, and I was in some other bands back there, and it just never worked out. And her and I moved out to California, and that was, after drinking only 7 years. I was 26 years old, and it was 1974, and her and I had a really very interesting relationship, but it was a turbulent relationship, and it was a love-hate relationship, and she got tired of me not coming around too, and I would not come around, I'd be out somewhere else, and so she got this dog, to keep her company when I wasn't around, and it was this crazy boxer dog, and we named him Seagrams, and he was just like, off the wall. I mean, like Siamese cats, they're like real high-strung, and this dog was like high-strung. He'd be bouncing off the walls, and her and I would be screaming and yelling at each other, and then her mom would come over, and she'd start screaming and yelling, and then her sister and her brother, and it was like we were all like, it was just chaotic, it was just totally chaotic. And she said, they said, well, we're going to move to California. You want to move with us? And I go, sure, And as chaotic as that whole thing was, I felt like I was finished with Chicago, and told my mom, I told my brother and my sisters, and I lived there 13 years, and I didn't tell one other person I was moving. I just told my immediate family, and I got in these, and my hair was really long by then, and her sister's boyfriend had longer hair than me, so I thought he was really cool. And we got into these 2 psychedelic vans, we painted, and it was all psychedelic, and a U-Haul, and we just, it was about 8 or 9 of us, and we just drove across the country, and ended up in Santa Monica in 1974, I think it was around April, and ended up at this place called the Kensington Motel on Ocean Avenue. It's not there anymore. But we checked in as one, or I think we checked in as two, and then all of us, 9 of us, went into this one room, and then the dog jumped in the pool, and you know, and the guy goes, "I want you guys out of here," and it took him like a month to get us all out of there. But I immediately started walking the beaches down in Santa Monica, and I found the Muscle Inn, and started drinking beer in there, and then I found this place on the pier, and I started drinking in there and using, you know, doing whatever I could, you know, to get high, and I just found myself just living in California, not knowing really anybody except the people that I moved here with, and I was, you know, I was very sick physically and emotionally, and I got, you know, these teeth, you know, that I had when I was a kid. I had too many teeth in my mouth, and they grew. My baby teeth grew up underneath my front teeth, and the other teeth like went out like these, you know, tusks or something. My mom used to call them, but they got all rotted, and they fell out. So I had like rotten teeth, and now I got liver spots. I'm like, you know, I'm sweating profusely, no matter what time of the day or night it is, winter, summer, whatever. And I was just really sick. I was really physically, emotionally, spiritually, I was gone. And I ended up just walking on the beach one day in Santa Monica, and I had, in my keen alcoholic mind, you know, Gene was saying, my mind tells me earlier. When my mind tells me something, I'm getting bad information, you know. That's why I have to have a sponsor in AA, because I could still do that. And but my mind told me at that point, my solution in life was to walk to Oregon, you know, from Santa Monica. And since I didn't have any money, my mind told me I could eat leaves, you know, to sustain myself. So I stuffed my pocket full of leaves, you know. I started walking up the beach to Oregon, you know, and I think I made it to Malibu, you know, but I came to, it was like 4 in the afternoon. I had my shirt off. I came to on the beach in Malibu, face down. I had dug a big ball of sand in my mouth. Sand was up my nose and my ears. And some kid was kicking sand on me. I think he thought I was dead, you know. "Mister, you okay, mister?" And I come to, and I'm like, I'm really bad hangover. And I had blisters all down my back. You could just go like this, and the water would just come out of the blisters. I was just totally burnt. And I started walking back to Santa Monica, and I made it there around, it was summer, it was, you know, and I made it there right before nightfall. And this girl and I were living up in Santa Monica, up around 26th and Pico. And I hit the beach in Pico, and I started walking up Pico, and I saw this place on 9th Street in Pico called the Claire Foundation. And it said something outside there about some sort of help, you know, self-help, whatever it said, I don't remember, but it caught my eye. I went in there, and the guy in there, his name was Pearl, and I'll never forget that, because there's a lot of guys named Pearl down south. And he said, "What seems to be your problem?" You know, and I go, "Well, look at me," you know. And I have a problem living, Pearl, and I have a problem, I can't stop drinking, and my life is shot, and I just don't know what to do, but I'm willing to do something, you know, anything, to get out of the place that I'm at now. And he said, "Do you have a place to live?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Well, I suggest that you go to Alcoholics Anonymous. There's a meeting tonight on 26th and Broadway." And that was July 16th, 1974. And I went to that meeting that first night, and I told my girlfriend that I was going to go to that meeting, and I think she was happy, you know, but I'm not sure, because I think she was afraid that something was going to happen where she couldn't like mother me and coddle me anymore and take care of me, you know, like she had been doing for a few years. And I went to that meeting, and I walked up on the porch. A guy came up and gave me a big smile, and he goes, "Hi, my name is Cecil, and I'm an alcoholic. What's your name?" I go, "My name is Cecil too," you know. And I'm like, you know, I'm at that point in my brain. I'm just, you know, let's face it, I was just trying to eat leaves, you know. So I wasn't too swift. So I took that as some sort of omen, you know. And I went in, and he put me down in the first row, and there was a 10-minute speaker, and there was a main speaker. And the 10-minute speaker was this lady that I know her from somewhere. And months later, I had come to find out that she told me, "Yeah, I was serving you beer on the pier that morning." You know, she had worked in this restaurant. And she said, "Because of you, I quit my job that day." And she was the first 10-minute speaker at that meeting that night. And then an elderly gentleman was the main speaker. His name was Maurice Z. And he was an elderly fellow and a person that I probably never would have ever had anything to do with, that kind of a person. You know, I was 26, you know. And I'm sitting there, and this guy's making me laugh so hard just by telling his story, and I was just laughing with identification. And everybody else in the room was laughing, and it was just such, I can't remember the last time I had laughed and just felt so good to just let everything out, you know. And at the end of that meeting, I shook his hand, and I shook the other lady's hand, and I started walking through the back, and in comes this guy. He looks like you know, Thor, you know, with the long blonde hair, and he's like healthy and smiling, and you know, and he stuck his hand out, and he goes, "Hey, my name is Matt Johnson. What's your name?" You know, Matt, and I said Cecil. And he goes, "You're new, huh?" I go, "Yeah." And he says, "I got about a year of sobriety, and I'm going to take you to another meeting tomorrow night." He doesn't ask me if I want to. He says, "I'm going to take you to a meeting tomorrow night. A lot of young people there our age, and you're going to, you know, it's a great meeting," and you know. And I started hanging out with this guy, and this guy was my Eskimo, and he saved my life. And last Saturday, Twee and I, my girlfriend Twee, who I love very much, we went to Matt's dad's 80th birthday last Saturday, you know, 80 years old, and he's sober over 30 years in the program. And Matt is sober 28 years now. He started taking me to these meetings, and I met a sponsor, and I guess Matt figured it out. He just wanted to be my friend, and I don't know if he wanted to, if he didn't really have any babies at that time, and so he introduced me to this guy that became my sponsor, and he was a musician, and I thought, well, that's really good because he's a musician, you know. Well, I mean, little did I know, you know. But this guy, Tony, my first sponsor, was just the sweetest guy that you would ever want to meet in your life, and he was really what I needed, because if I would have had one of those hard-hearted sponsors, I don't know if I could have stayed, because I was so, like, you know, timid and scared, you know. And Tony was my sponsor for about a year and a half, and he took me through my first birthday, and he took me through these steps, and you know, and I started working with other people, and I started doing things, and I started doing these steps, and you know, and I did have a spiritual awakening, you know, as a result of these steps. And I started meeting all these friends, and I hung out with Matt all the time, and I hung out with this other guy named Dennis. We were like the Three Musketeers, and we were doing everything together. People used to call me Dennis and call him Cecil because we hung around so much together. And it was just great, you know. And about a year and a half later, my sponsor left the group and he went somewhere else, and I got this new sponsor. And it's funny how God, you know, the sense of humor that God has, I mean, in my life anyway, because at a year and a half, I couldn't take that nice guy sponsor anymore. And God put a hard-hearted sponsor in my life, and he was like, you know, do that, you know. And he was an ex-Marine, and he yelled at me, and, you know, because I needed yelling at, because I was pretty, you know, I was pretty much a goober, you know. He would ask me a question, and I would kind of mumble, and he would yell at me and say, you answer like a human being, and you talk, and you look in my eyes, and, and he told me, about my hygiene and everything, you got to do this, you got to dress this way, you got to do that, because I didn't know what to do. And, this guy was just so good for me, and he said, Cecil, you could have been an alcoholic, 200 years ago, and there would have been no help for you, but God put you on this earth at this particular time so that you could get sober and be in Alcoholics Anonymous and get help. He said, God has a purpose for you in your life, and I truly believe that up until today, that I have a purpose in my life. And when I'm feeling sorry for myself, like I have been for the last day, since yesterday, I just remember that there's a purpose in my life, and I have to move forward, and I was around AA for a while, and I got married in sobriety, and this is the lady that I'm divorced with now for a while, and we had 2 kids, and my daughter Jessica, I love that name, Jessica. My daughter Jessica is living, like I said, with her mom in Ohio, and she's 17 years old. She's going to graduate high school this year. My son Adam is 14, and he wants to move to Ohio now, so he's getting on a plane tomorrow morning here. I got to drive back here tomorrow and put him on a plane for Thanksgiving to go back and visit his mom and his sister for a week. And my stinking thinking is saying, well, he's just not going to come back now, because I know he wants to move there anyway, but I want him to at least finish his semester out in high school this year, or at least try to stay through the first, he's a freshman, and try to stay until June. But I don't know if it's going to happen, and if he really doesn't want to be here, I'm going to have to let him go, but I'm going to have to tell him how I feel too. And did I come up with these things that I have to do? No. I talked to my sponsor yesterday. As soon as my son told me, the first thing I did was I called my sponsor and said, what do I do? And he gave me direction, told me what to do. So if you're new, I hope you get a sponsor, and I hope you get friends like I have had with like Matt and Dennis, and my now sponsor is Joe, who spoke here a while back, and then he asked me to come here and lead and speak for 10 minutes, and that was about a month and a half ago. So he's a really good man. He's like the kind of a person that I always wanted to be. He's gentle, and he's loving, and he listens, and he cares, and that's the kind of person I want to be. And I'm not always like that. I like to control things. When I first got sober, I was working in a shampoo factory as a chemical compounder, breaking my back, making no money. And now, because of this program, and they say, AA is not an employment service, but I've had my own business now for 11 years because of this program. And when I was newly sober, a friend of mine got me into the business I'm in now, and I've been doing that for 27 years, 26 years. And I was about a year sober, a little over a year sober when I got into the industry I'm in now. And I've had my own business for the last 11 years. With all the events that have happened lately, business has been really bad in this last year, and I've had to turn it over every day. And trying to make, payroll, trying to do all these things. When I got here, I didn't even know what the word payroll meant, except, pay me, but, and at one point in my sobriety, I had a sponsor named Claude B., and he was fantastic, and he was Twee's husband, and he died a couple years ago, and over 2 years ago. And actually, my ex-wife and I sang at Twee and Claude's wedding about 14 years ago, 15. And Claude died, and I got divorced, and my sponsor now that I have now is really close to Twee, and we all started kind of hanging out together because Claude died and I got divorced, and you know, and now all of a sudden sparks start flying, and you know, Twee and I have been dating now for 1.5 years, and she's such a joy in my life because she doesn't want anything from me, you know. She's just there for me, and she loves me, and I feel the same way about her, you know. And when I was growing up as a kid, we went to this church that handled snakes, rattlesnakes and copperheads. It was Pentecostal, holy rollers, and they did, you know, the dancing and the handling the snakes and hooping and hollering, and I had a real, you know, I had a real tough time with God. I thought that if I was a bad boy, I was going to have to handle those snakes, you know, and very confusing. But, you know, because of this program, you know, I have a God that I know that loves me, and when I stay out of my way, you know, and not try to control things, which I'm not always good at, I have to admit. But when I do that, I have a peace that's beyond any comprehension, you know, and I can allow somebody to love me, you know, and I can allow people to let people go because that's really what they really want to do in their hearts, you know. And I have to have a long talk with my son and make sure that that's really what he wants for his life. And, you know, after all, if he goes back, he is going to be with his mother who loves him, and, you know. And that would, you know, and if it works out for him, I should be happy for him. And if it doesn't work out for him, hopefully he'll learn a life lesson, you know. And just a few years ago, I would not have allowed that to happen. I would have held on and held on and held on. And now I'm letting go and letting go and letting go, because that's the only way that I can feel peace, you know, is to let go. And I'm going to let all of you go, and I'm finished. Thank you.
Sorry to interrupt your viewing. Taper Dave here. Just wanted to take a second to ask you to like and subscribe to my channel. Let me know if you like what you're listening. I've got some very good talks here, and this one's a great one. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Tell me what you think. Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst and one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller start calibration, out, in, oop, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right, but I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.